Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're here for the first time. My name's Gitta and today I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and this is the two earliest divine feminine archetypes, at least per Judeo-Christian mythos, and those are Lilith and Eve. So this is more of a video on my relationship with these two feminine archetypes that I'm going to explain, but also some insights I've had about them. Sorry about the reflection, the glare on my glasses. It's really annoying, but if I take off my glasses, then I feel like I can't see properly, and I'm going to be referencing some notes which are on my computer, so I hope it doesn't bother you too much. And in general, I apologize for the lighting in this room. I'm really into color therapy. All my walls in my house are painted like very saturated, bold hues. You can see this is like a Caribbean blue, and it's beautiful, but sometimes it gets on my nerves because it gets quite dark in here and I don't have an overhead light, and the other room out there is like painted like a really bright yellow. But anyway, I digress. So the reason I want to talk about these two archetypes, these two goddesses, if you will, is because they both played a significant role in my psyche throughout my life. And if you've watched it in my other videos, you may have guessed by now that I do come from a Christian background. I was raised Catholic, but I've been exploring paganism for a while and always been very interested in mythology. And so because the Christian myths still hold a lot of water in my psyche, I have a tendency to superimpose other myths on top of my Christian beliefs, if that makes sense. But yeah, sorry, that's a little offshoot. So these two goddesses have always played a significant role in my psyche throughout my life. I've always connected with Eve, always sympathized with her for wanting to eat that apple, and always sympathized with her thirst or her hunger for wisdom. That's how I see it more than anything, a hunger for wisdom. This is something I've always craved as well, hence why I find myself down this path, why I'm so interested in the occult, despite, what my Christian upbringing would tell me about or warn me about exploring this sort of stuff. So anyway, I've always resonated with Eve, and just her wanting to eat that apple. Like I would have eaten the apple as well, and her logic behind wanting to eat that apple, she was in the Garden of Eden. God had provided everything for her, had made everything for her. So she had no conception of threat or displacement or hurt or loss. So even though he had warned her about not eating that tree, I'm sure it didn't seem like a real threat to her because she had no concept of negativity, right? And even the serpent that seduced her, that tempted her with this apple, she would have not recognized this being as being a demonly being or being a pet of the devil or something like that, because she had no conception of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, all the animals were created by God. They were good. They were all equal, as was all the trees, all the fruit. So I totally understand her reasoning behind feeling that it couldn't be that bad. And I think I am the same way. Like, my psyche is programmed very much the same way, hence why I dabble in this stuff. As I said, dabble in the cult, research the cult. I was ingrained with such a strong understanding that God is good and that he loves us and that he wants the best for us, and that everything he has created, he's the Almighty, he's the creator, everything he's created is for us. So even though he may warn us about the temptations and about, what may happen when we dabble with too many things, or what the pain and suffering that wisdom can bring, because it's knowledge, and of course ignorance is bliss, but at the end of the day, it's not that it's evil. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, sorry, that's a little bit of a digress. It's a little bit of a offshoot, but this is my thinking around Eve. And I remember from a very young age, like in my In my teens or something like that, I always wanted to get a tattoo of a snake. It's something about the symbolism of a snake that really drew me in. And it's not that I was ever interested in having a pet snake, or that, I really like snakes, or, they're my favorite animal or something like that. No, not at all. It's just the symbolism of the snake that always stayed with me, and it was just very intriguing. And again, this idea that, something, a snake, could be inherently evil. It's just ridiculous, um, when it was created by God, and just with the projections that we put onto things, right? Um, so I never got that. I always wanted to get a tattoo of a snake on my lower back. I never did, but I ended up getting this red snake here, and I got that last year on my 30th birthday. And I don't even entirely know why I got it. When I got it, it was just something that I couldn't let go. I always wanted a snake, and I wanted a new tattoo, and it seemed like a good idea. And then after I got it, a lot of people were asking me like, "What is that for?" And I had a hard time explaining why exactly I got it, but I knew, like, on some deeper subconscious level, a deeper level of my psyche, there was a real reason why I got it. And it's all starting to make sense now that I'm exploring this path, paganism, studying about witchcraft and all that, and learning about mythology and the divine feminine. It's all making sense now why I've always been attracted to this snake. Snake is a symbol of wisdom, divine feminine wisdom, and that is something that has been with me my whole life. So it's just interesting, experiencing a lot of synchronicities, and it's awesome. Um, so yeah. So anyway, um, always been attracted, always resonated with Eve from that standpoint. Eve, the apple, the snake, just totally jive with it. But then I recently became aware of Lilith, the earlier archetype, the very first woman, per Judeo Christian mythos. And I'm sure most of you guys know the story of Lilith. If you don't, please research it. She was Adam's first wife, who was not created from his rib like Eve was, but she was created of the same matter as Adam, I believe. And she refused to submit to Adam. She refused to lie down and, I believe, like, have sex with him in the way that he wanted to, sort of like submissive missionary style. She wanted to be the boss, or she wanted to do things her way. And I don't fucking blame her. But yeah, so anyway, she wasn't having it with Adam. And she was like, yeah, F you, and left the Garden of Eden, went out, found herself her own boyfriend, this demon boyfriend, and started having demon offspring. And then I think, like, an angel came and told her to go back into the Garden of Eden, or else she would kill the babies. And I think I'm not even exactly sure. So don't quote me on this. Please do the research yourself. But I believe she killed her own babies. So she was like, she really represents this type of woman who is like, the early feminist. She's like one of the earliest archetypes of the feminist. And in they even say she's like the patron saint of abortions, because she decided which baby she was going to have and which baby she was going to kill. Like, it was, her decision. Is up to her, the terms and conditions under which she would be a wife and a mother. And so who couldn't resonate with that, right? So I learned about Lilith for like the first time, I think, a year ago. And this is when I was starting, this is, as usual, I was studying my natal chart, and I became aware of the Lilith in your natal chart. And if you guys are into astrology and you haven't looked this up, I thoroughly suggest that you do. There's actually 3 points that Lilith can be. There's like Lilith the asteroid, Lilith the epigee of the moon, like the whatever. It's kind of complicated, but check them out. I will leave some links to where you can get your natal chart if you don't know that already. Um, but anyway, so I came to examine where Lilith was in my natal chart, and I found out, because they say Lilith can like really show you your shadow self and your hidden demons. So I was starting to explore shadow work and all that, and hence why I looked this up. And your repressed self. So I found out that Lilith was in my first house. And she's in my first house, like conjunct my ascendant. And the first house is very much like your personality, how you come across to people. It is that kind of like the ego, kind of like that image, that facade that you put up, to protect yourself in the world, and like, what you kind of put out there. And so I have Lilith conjunct my ascendant, which means that this rebelliousness, the rebelliousness that Lilith represents, this overt feminism that Lilith represents, and she also represents like sexuality, like very um like, yeah, sexual promiscuity, and just and sexuality, raw sexuality. So all of that is has been a part of my life, in that it's something I put out there, whether I'm conscious of it or not. And I started to think about this, even though I was raised Catholic, and I definitely grew up one, like, as a daughter of patriarchy, in the sense that I was a daddy's girl. My dad was very Catholic. I've always tried to please him. I've always tried to do good in school, and to an extent, I very much like used to do things to please other people, or did what was expected of me, particularly in the early part of my life. Like, I'd say, like, the first 15 years of my life, I'd say. Um, but then when I got into like my mid teens, like 15, something like that. Anyway, I started to experience within myself, and perhaps earlier than this, I think maybe even like as early as like 10, 9, or something like that. I started to experience a dichotomy within me, where I felt like there was this other side of me that would be unloved if I exposed her. And when I did expose her, when she did expose herself, the shadow, when it would bubble up, it was unloved, and rejected. And I experienced a lot of pain and rejection from that. But I had this other side of me, like this bad girl that just wanted to get out, and she wanted to experience things. She wanted to taste forbidden fruit that I wouldn't allow her to do consciously. So I had to do it in a very shadow sense, in a very hidden sense. So I definitely went through a rebellious stage where I was about 16, so like sneaking out of my house and doing a lot of shit that my parents didn't know about, and smoking weed, and starting to have like relationships that they didn't know about with guys and stuff like that. And I have to say as well, from a young age, even earlier than that, like 13 years old, I had a lot of friends. I found I was attracted to people, girls that were older than me. Um, and my friends, a lot of the friends that I had, female friends, were very, very rebellious in nature, and very much the opposite of me, but they were a lot like me. Like, we bonded on the shadow side, like my shadow bonded with them so strongly, but they were very much like out and open, and I was like in the closet in terms of my bad girl ways. So, so yeah, so I had a lot of friends. One friend in particular, who was very promiscuous, and I used to live kind of vicariously through her. She would have all these experiences and go out and like try different drugs, and like have all these different wild sexual experiences, and she would tell me about them, and it was, like I said, sort of living vicariously through her. And she kind of really went off the deep end. Like, by the time she was like in her late teens, early 20s, she like kind of had turned into a prostitute. Like, there was instances where I had heard she was prostituting herself and selling herself for money. So she was just a very overtly sexual person. And I had other friends like this, maybe not quite so sexual as her or promiscuous as her, but definitely like bad girls. Like, they had this attitude, like I'm gonna do me, like fuck what you think about me. And, girls that kind of had like a bad rep. And I was always like the good girl that hung out with girls who had a bad reputation. I couldn't help it. We were just drawn to each other. And I understand this to be Lilith's influence in my life now that I am come to understand her. So as I've been exploring paganism and witchcraft, reading a lot about witchcraft and stuff like that, I realized that I'm less interested in doing magic than I am with connecting with the divine feminine. And I think my desire to connect with the divine feminine is what is sustaining my exploration of this path. And upon exploring this path, as I said, I became aware of the concept of a matron deity, and I started to question, who might be my matron deity, or, who may have been with me this whole time. And I was starting to, once I learned of Lilith, I felt like perhaps she is supposed to be my matron deity, or she's wanting to be my matron deity. So I've been thinking a lot about the ways that I would continue to work with her or continue to allow her to have presence in my life, because so far she's continually showing up as a shadow self, and I don't know how, and I'm trying to integrate her in a way that is positive and helpful. And I bought this book. This is a book I'm reading this month, Mysteries of the Dark Moon. And it talks about like these dark goddesses and healing with the dark feminine. And anyway, I'm only halfway through this book right now. I'm just getting to the part where she's starting to talk about the different goddesses. And there's a whole chapter in here on Lilith, which is why I bought the book. So perhaps I'm filming this video a little prematurely because my whole concept and ideas around this may change by the time I'm finished reading this. I don't know. But anyway, I'm saying all this because, like I said, Lilith has been showing up in my life, but like a shadow self. And I'm wondering if she's supposed to be my matron or how I'm going to integrate her. But then continuing to contemplate it further, and all these synchronicities that I've been experiencing, as I said, the snake and whatnot, and my desire for wisdom has made me think differently about about Eve. And the interesting thing is that Lilith has a reputation of being a real badass, and some consider her to be a demon, but in paganism and pagan circles, she's definitely got a lot of respect as a goddess, and as being a very powerful goddess and a very powerful energy to connect with. And it just made me think about Eve and how Eve is kind of undervalued, I think, and Eve is kind of looked over as also being a powerful goddess or a powerful feminine archetype to connect with, because whereas Lilith is like the mother of death and destruction, Eve is the mother of all life. She is the original mother. Yeah, she's the original mother. So I know many people would consider Eve to be the weaker one in that she was made from Adam's rib and she submitted to be his wife when Lilith wouldn't. And it's unfortunate because not only in the Christian community is Eve undervalued or doesn't get any respect. She's seen as the scapegoat of sin. She's the reason why we're all doomed to life as mere mortals. She brought sin to the world. She took us out. It was through her that we got thrown out of the Garden of Eden. And she's received a lot of flack for this, but I just feel like there's got to be more to her myth than that, and it's unfortunate that people don't talk about Eve differently. And I'm saying this because it's not only in the Christian community, but I feel like in the pagan community as well. Nobody talks about, even never I've heard anybody talk about Eve and the power of her thirst for wisdom and even I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting excited and finding it difficult to find the words of what I'm trying to say. But I watched this one girl's video And I tried to find the video again so I could link it for this video, but I can't. So I'll just tell you what she said. And her name is Alyssa Sharpe. She's an astrologer. She's a very good astrologer. She raises a lot of sort of like contemplative. She has a lot of videos and sort of just like contemplative chit chat as well about spiritual stuff, which is cool. So it's not all astrology if you're not like fully fluent in astrology, is what I'm trying to say. Um, so she said something along the lines of what I'm saying about, Lilith being considered the one to resist patriarchy, but in reality, Eve also denied the patriarchy. Eve also resisted God, went against God. She went against her husband. She did what the fuck she wanted to do, She used her own knowledge and power and decision making to do what she wanted to do and what was best for her. So in that sense, she could be considered just as strong of an archetype to connect with. Um, so yeah, so Lilith, on the one hand, this mother of death and destruction, Eve is the mother of all life. And I feel like we could learn something from her because she did manage to integrate a little bit in that she seemed to balance this being a wife, being a mother, and being her own person as well, and making her own decisions based on her own free will. And for that reason, I'm coming to appreciate Eve a lot more as an archetype. Um, yeah, this is an image I found of Eve, and I remember I printed this off a few years ago before I even started uh, exploring paganism intently. At first, I was just seeking out images of Christian, like devotional art, but as depicted through different different lenses, so not the typical European, et cetera, et cetera. And I found this artist, and he's like an Asian artist, so you can see Eve looks like an Asian woman, and this is obviously like not your typical artwork. And I just thought it was beautiful. But this, like I said, I sourced this image. I must have printed this off like a couple years ago. So these two archetypes, these two divine feminine have been, I feel like, vying, competing for my attention for a while, and it's just interesting, and it's an interesting insight that I wanted to share with you guys. I was watching Priestess Ossette's video, and if you haven't seen her channel, please check it out. She's got amazing, amazing, awesome content on there, and she was talking about the first the first goddess, and how the first statue they found of a goddess was a black woman, she had big breasts, big ass, big stomach, and short coiled hair. So obviously that is not this. But I just thought that was interesting as well, because as we all know, all humanity stemmed from Africa, and she could have very well been the original. She's considered the original mother of this statue, and that is really could be Eve as we know her. Do you know what I mean? That could actually be what Eve looked like. And I find this interesting because while I was grappling with who could be my matron deity, I am mixed race. My father is white, my mother's black. So I definitely connect with European goddesses, and I'm called um, to exploring European goddesses. But on the other hand, in terms of the divine feminine mother archetype, my mother is black. So I've been wanting to connect with a African goddess as well. I've been wanting to connect with an African goddess, and I've been researching or reading up on some of the African pantheons like Yoruba and Vodou and Santeria, and I'm definitely attracted and have a connection with some of the goddesses within those pantheons, particularly Yemoya. But I never considered Eve as a goddess, and as a black goddess at that, the first mother, the original mother, until recently. And as I had like a real eureka moment, perhaps I'm really behind the times on this. And you guys, you guys may be saying, well, like, duh, Brigitte, like, this is nothing fucking new. But for me, it is new and exciting news. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. But it also made me think of another video that I watched, Sparkle Divine Tarot's video, Havana from Sparkle Divine Tarot. She recently put out a video like last week about her problem with goddess decks, and I thought it was very interesting. And she said her main beef was that they recycle the same goddesses over and over again. It's just like these same generic goddesses like Venus, Freya, Kali Ma, Demeter. Do you know what I mean? It's like the same goddesses in all these goddess decks. It's like a little Skittles pack of like all the tasty goddesses. Let's taste the rainbow. Do you know what I'm saying? And she felt that it's kind of superficial, and she was kind of insinuating that the best solution is to have a deck dedicated to one pantheon. And I think this is a great idea. And I don't know why this is not being done already, why it hasn't been done already. If you think about, the plethora of Hindu goddesses, the plethora of Egyptian goddesses, African goddesses, Greek goddesses, Babylonian, etc. There's no reason why each pantheon couldn't have its own deck devoted to a goddess deck devoted to a single pantheon. I do feel that this would give us a lot more of a holistic overview when we're connecting with the divine feminine as she presents herself or is presented through various different cultures. So I just thought that was a great idea. And I was also thinking like how cool it would be to even have like a deck of divine feminine archetypes as per like the Judeo-Christian mythos. So like Mary Magdalene, Mary, Eve, Lilith, divine Sophia. Yeah, and I just thought that would be kind of cool as well. So anyway, this was a bit of a ramble, but I hope you find it interesting. And please understand that I am coming at this from a Christian perspective and from a Christian background, and I am still exploring paganism. I'm still kind of new to paganism, and so I'm well aware that Eve is probably connected to other goddesses outside of the Christian pantheon, and I'm sure she is represented. I'm sure there are other goddesses that are very much linked to Eve from the Babylonian, Sumerian pantheons and whatnot that predate Eve as we know her. And if you know about any, please, or any reading or something like that I can do, please comment below because I would love to explore this concept more. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this and let me know what you think about Eve, Lilith. What is your connection with these two archetypes? And I would love to hear what you think. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.